Thank you, Presiding Officer. It's been an interesting debate, and it's clear that there are some considerable tensions between the three other parties in the Chamber in terms of how the subsidy should be secured and how it should be applied. I think the main burden of the comments from the SNP were that the Lib Dems are two-faced. Well, maybe that's true. I mean, it is the case, I think, that Jo Swinson would have some difficulty in Bearsden trying to explain to people in her constituency why they should pay more in order to subsidise fuel prices in the Highlands, and that's maybe why she doesn't do it. I noted in previous circumstances that Mr MacArthur had been arguing for increased prices for air travel, except air travel from the north of Scotland. So inconsistency is maybe the hallmark of Liberal. Absolutely.
Ian McCarthy.
I am grateful for Des McNulty to make an intervention on this point. I was coruscated by the Labour opponent during the last election for suggesting that the Labour Party were recommending that lifeline services would not be exempt from this sort of duty. So is he really suggesting that the Labour Party make no distinction between a lifeline air service and those where there are opportunities to take other modes of transport?
I think we supported and helped in the introduction of lifeline air services, but the point is that you were arguing that other people should pay more, but that your services should be exempt from the process. Now, of course, hypocrisy is not entirely the purview of the Liberal Democrats. I mean, if I've heard Rob Gibson talk about peak oil once, I have heard him talk about it 100 times. But of course, the burden of what he's arguing for here would involve more emissions and faster depletion of oil. I don't see members from urban areas representing the SNP in the Chamber or arguing any more vociferously for their constituents to pay more in taxation for fuel prices in order to subsidise people elsewhere. Bluntly, Minister, if there are 149 filling stations in Scotland you have identified that you think there should be subsidies put in place for, why don't you do it? There is a rural petrol stations grant scheme. You could make money available if you wish to do that. Perfectly straightforward. You wouldn't run across any EU difficulties in so doing. It's a matter of political choice. It's a political choice that you have not made. The Liberal Democrats then accused the Conservatives of sitting on the fence. All I can say is that it must be a stout fence for Alec Johnson to sit on it. But I think there is a point here that actually the parties opposite are missing. Mr Johnson.
Can I take the opportunity to explain directly to the member that there is no chance of me sitting on that fence because there is no space left from the Liberal Democrats crouched on it?
Well, it does seem to be a crowded place, that's for sure. I think there is actually something that we could do here, and I do think there is a particular case in relation to fuel costs within Scottish Islands. If you look at the numbers, and I've got the average fuel prices as at 28th of April 2009, I'd just like to inform Mr Johnson that Aberdeen is actually the place in Scotland with the lowest average fuel price, so much for the problems in Aberdeen. But the places that do have very sizable amounts above the Scottish average are Brodick, 115.4 pence for diesel, Kirkwall, 110.9 pence for diesel, Lerwick, 114.4 pence, Stornoway, 113.7, Tobermory, 111.9. Those are the significant differences. It's the island communities who are particularly disadvantaged in relation to fuel prices. And we could do something about this, I think. I think there would be a case, an argument which we could actually put and successfully carry forward on behalf of island communities. Again, the Scottish Government has introduced an RET scheme, discriminating between some islands and other islands. But we could actually have an RET fuel scheme that actually applied to all islands, where the Scottish Government said, because of the particular problems in the island communities, we think there is a case for actually introducing some kind of a fuel subsidy to protect those islands from an undue cost of fuel. It's a real problem, there is a real way forward, but they're not taking it. Why don't they take it? Why don't they stand up for island communities. The reality, of course, is they're politically fettered from doing so because they know that everybody else would want it. But then we know that if you say island communities, then people in remote rural communities want it. If people in remote rural communities want it, then people in rural communities want it. And then you get people in urban communities saying, well, actually, we're not prepared to subsidise it. Now, I actually think there is a genuine case for island communities. And I think there's actually a winnable case in terms of derogation for island communities. So why don't we look at that? Why not have a sensible discussion, except that the parties opposite are not prepared to do it? Thank you.